The first major break in the Shear case would come 10 days after the murders and just 40 miles away. That's when Missouri investigators would hear about a shooting in Dyersburg, Tennessee. It happened the same night Sherry and Megan were killed, and it involved a man trying to force his way into a home. Testing would confirm a match between the gun used at the Shear home and the gun used by that unknown assailant to injure the 26-year-old woman who stopped him from getting inside. You're about to hear a reenactment of the Dyersburg shooting presented by our TV station. It is guided by Sergeant Bud Cooper, who knew the case well because he had interviewed the victim.
Careful, get everything to the kitchen first.
9:30 p.m. A mom and her 3 kids get back from the store.
It was unusually warm that Saturday. They had their big door open on the trailer, and like the glass door, screen door was closed.
A maroon-colored van pulls into the driveway. A man in dark clothing approaches.
Hey, my dad's not here.
Can I help you?
Yeah, I'm kind of lost. I'm looking for a road just off the main road.
What road?
I'm not really sure.
The guy in the van said that he was looking for his friend, a guy by the name of Jeremy Taylor.
When the stranger offers to get a map out of his van, she tries to call a neighbor, but her phone won't work. She decides in that moment to say whatever it takes to get him to leave.
I called my neighbor. He knows this Jeremy Taylor that you're talking about. Go ahead and go down to his trailer and he can give you directions.
Well, I couldn't find my map, but I did find this.
And that's when he pulled the gun out. Raised his jacket and pulled the gun out of his waistband. She immediately lunged and grabbed the gun and started fighting with him.
Just what's your car? No! Just take it!
Just take it! The keys are in it!
She says he's able to get a hand free and pulls the gun out of the door and then shoots through the door, shoots her in the upper.
When you hear her story, how does that help you develop theories about what happened at the Shear home?
Certainly you would think that there were similarities, that he's using some type of ruse to talk to Sherry and Megan, or they're separated and he pulls the gun on one or the other.
As you just heard Sergeant Cooper explain, the Dyersburg shooting gave Missouri investigators new insight into Sherry and Megan's killer. It also gave them their first look at the suspect, thanks to a composite sketch created from a description given by the Dyersburg victim. They were now looking for a white male, 30 to 50 years old, with a small build, wearing glasses. The suspect had straight, medium-length graying hair and a graying mustache. Former New Madrid County Sheriff Terry Stevens remembers how the Tennessee link impacted their work.
We just didn't have any direction as to where to go. It was all a guessing game up to that point. And it remained that way until, well, we found out about the crime over in Dyersburg, and we connected that.
The Dyersburg case also came with a suspect vehicle description, a maroon-colored van. Portageville officer Freddie Hill says he constantly thought about their suspect and his van.
I know every day I worked, even when I wasn't working, I was constantly looking for a van that fit that description and a person, because it was always on my mind.
From its very first day, the Shear case was worked by a team of local, county, and state investigators. Yes, it was about resources and manpower. But you also need to know a lot of these guys took the case personally, and for good reason. Several of them grew up in New Madrid County, and some, like Bud Cooper and Freddie Hill, actually lived in Portageville, where the murders happened.
Bud took this case to heart. He felt like this happened in his backyard, and he took it personal.
Freddie Hill remembers wondering if the killer was a local too.
We don't know if he was just happened to be traveling through and done this, or what connection he really had here.
But what Missouri investigators didn't know, what they wouldn't know for 20 years, was just how close their killer really was. In the spring of 1998, Robert Brashers was living just an hour away from Portageville, Missouri, in Paragould, Arkansas. Brashers had a family. He was in a long-term relationship with a woman named Rose Fultz, and they shared a 6-year-old daughter, Deborah. Rose also had twin 11-year-old daughters who lived with them, and Brashers had an older daughter living out of state. And just 2 weeks after Sherry and Megan Shear were found murdered in their living room, Brashers was caught committing a crime in Paragould that seemed to mirror his actions in Portageville and in Dyersburg later that same night. It happened on April 12, 1998 at 4:30 a.m. Officers are called to a home on West Main Street in Paragould for a man who appeared to be trying to get inside a neighbor's front door. Upon arrival, officers find the male subject squatted down beside the driver's side tire of the victim's vehicle. Officers describe the man as intoxicated and they arrest him. Then they describe what the man has with him: wire cutters in his back pocket, a video camera in a duffel bag. Officers looked around the vehicle he was hiding behind. They find a loaded .22 caliber revolver and a pair of gloves behind the tire where he had been kneeling. They later discovered the victim's phone line had been cut. Court records show prosecutors in Greene County, Arkansas, charged Brashers with 2 felonies and a misdemeanor: attempted residential burglary, felon in possession of a firearm, and criminal mischief. But despite the alerts that had gone out from southeast Missouri, officers in Paragould did not make a connection between this case and a shocking double murder just 65 miles to the north. Given what we know now, the person living at that home on Main Street is very lucky Robert Brashers never made it inside. Back in southeast Missouri, the Shear investigation moved from spring to summer. Stephen Shear had just lost his mom and sister to an unknown killer. Shear told me in 2017 he just tried to stay focused and keep moving forward at that time.
After everything happened, everybody told me that I had to be strong for my dad. So that's what I did.
The officers on his mom and sister's case conducted countless interviews, executed search warrants, collected hair and blood samples. They ran down known sex offenders, and the multi-department team continued to grow. New Madrid County Sheriff's Deputy Chris Hensley started working on the Shear case in August. Hensley remembers how easily he too became attached to the case.
You know, Megan and Sherry, they were home just like, you know, all our families were. They weren't a high-risk victim. You know, they were at home doing what, you know, good people are supposed to be doing on the weekends, you know, cleaning the house and cleaning the yard and you know, just like our families were doing.
2 months later, State Trooper Phil Gregory left the road and joined the team.
But October of '98, I came into the criminal unit, and immediately I was thrown into running leads related to this case.
When you came onto the case, were you still working leads close to Portageville and New Madrid County? Were you already spread out, or were you doing both?
We were doing both. You know, you can't leave anything neglected if there's some connection there to the family or an acquaintance or a service provider or that kind of thing. We went down those roads. But it certainly led us to the theory that it was, you know, somebody traveling through the area or more transient, or quite honestly, the discussion of a serial murderer was right up front then.
Which is interesting because that certainly was never made public, was it?
No, I mean, again, you had to keep your options open.
Chris Hensley recalls hitting the road very early on with Sergeant Bud Cooper on some very promising leads, including one that took them to Texas.
And they had a suspect down there, and it was an interdiction stop, and during the stop, the trooper had found what they had called a rape kill kit inside this van.
A suspect with a kill kit in a van. It reminded investigators on the Shear case of the armed man in the van who showed up in Dyersburg, Tennessee, just hours after killing Sherry and Megan. Hensley remembers Sergeant Cooper receiving the Texas details through the law enforcement teletype system.
So they had put that teletype out, and Bud had got the teletype. We went and spoke to the investigator. He took us to the assistant DA there in San Marcos. She said we didn't have enough for a search warrant to get his DNA. And she's like, you know, maybe back home where you're from, you have plenty of facts, you know, to get the search warrant, but there's no way we can get that here. And Bud said, can you just get me in front of the judge? And Bud presented that search warrant, and that Texas judge signed that search warrant.
Hensley and Cooper then headed to Michigan in hopes of searching the suspect's house. Hensley recalls Cooper convincing a second judge to sign another search warrant.
You have got to tell me what Bud said to those judges.
You know, Bud is Bud. He was very articulate and intelligent and sincere. And, you know, those judges wanted us to solve that case, you know, once they read what happened to the Shears and the ages and what have you.
So he left those judges knowing just how important that case was.
Exactly.
Hensley remembers finding even more evidence in that suspect's home. A small caliber pistol, handcuffs, a video camera. The man did end up being cleared, but Hensley calls the discovery just one example of what he saw while working the Shear case.
If the general public knew the violence out there, they wouldn't sleep at night.
That trip to Texas was one of many taken by Missouri investigators who had themselves convinced they would solve Sherry and Megan's case. They just had to keep working. And what they found along the way would change everything they thought they knew about their killer.
The most important thing that they told us was that you're going to find something that links your killer to South Carolina in 1990 and to Portersville in 1998. And not necessarily that he lives here or that he works here, could have friends here. Something took him to South Carolina in 90 and something brought him here in 98.
Could be friends, family, work, but it's something.
Something.
So now you're looking for that something.
That's right.
That's next on Chasing a Ghost, Chapter 3, The Case They Wouldn't Let Go.